Hi and welcome to this screencast on testing your code. Today I'm going to talk about how you use assertions and how you can test a function using a unit test. An assert statement is a little line of code that checks if some condition is true. If the condition is true, the assert statement does nothing, and if the condition is not true, the assert statement will halt your program and stop. And this is quite useful for making sure that an input or an output is as you would expect it to be. So you can use assert statements to check that some conditions are true and make sure that your program will stop if these are not true. Now let's say I have a program where I first create a variable x and assign the value 7, and next I create a variable y and assign the value of x squared. Now since y is equal to x squared, then y will always be a non-negative number no matter what value x has. To make sure that's always the case, I could write an assert statement that checks this condition. So I could write stop if not y greater than or equal to 0. Now when I run this code, we can see that my two variables x and y get created and they have the correct values. Now if I change the value of x to, for example, 0 and rerun the code, I can see that it runs perfectly. Again, x is 0, now y is 0. This assert statement, the stop if not, doesn't do anything because the condition is met. Now what would happen if x has a complex number as this value? I could, for example, set it equal to 2 times 1i, which is the complex identity. Now if I run this code, we see that the assert statement will actually stop and give this error message. So x has the value of 2i and y has the value of -4 because that's 2i squared. And now since y is not greater than or equal to 0, my stop if not statement will give me this error. So I can see that something wrong has happened here. Now you can use these assert statements inside your code to check that certain conditions are met as your code runs and to make sure that the program will halt if some condition is not met. Another way that you can use assert statements is to create what's called a unit test. So in a unit test you test a unit of code, which is usually a single function. And the way you would do it is you would create your function, and then in a separate script you would create a number of tests that call your function and make sure that the input and output are correct. Now let me show you how you can do that. Now let's say I create a small function called squareMe that simply squares its argument. Now I can source this. Oops, I forgot parentheses here. Now I can manually test my function here by typing squareMe of 2, for example. It should output the value 4. Now if I want to test my function more thoroughly, I can create a separate unit test script. So I'll create a new R script. And now I'll put in some stop if not conditions. So I could write stop if not squareMe of 2, that should be equal to 4. Or stop if not squareMe of 3 should be equal to 9. And I can put in, for example, one more, squareMe of 0 should be equal to 0. Now I can simply run this code here, and we see when it's run, nothing happens. It doesn't give any error messages, which means that my unit test has passed. Now if there was a bug in my code, for example, there could be an extra little minus here that shouldn't be there. Then when I run my unit tests, we can see that 2 of the unit tests will fail, and it says here squareMe of 2 is not true, is not equal to 4, and the same for this one down here. So then we can go back and fix the bug and then rerun the tests, and they should run fine. And having these tests created makes it very easy to make sure that every time you change something in your program, it still works as it should.